Well, good morning, church. I'd love to just take a moment, welcome in all of our locations that are with us. Good morning to you, wherever you happen to be. I saw somebody from Kenya was on there. So welcome to you this morning. In Baghdad, there's some really cool stuff going on with the community of Baghdad. So welcome to you. Pastor Owen was down there with them this week, and super exciting to see God just gathering people. I heard a testimony last night of someone who was in Phoenix, and they were there for family stuff in Super Bowl. Long story short, they're in a hotel. They're not able to be here on the weekend, so they join our online family live gathering, and they've got it on, and it must have been loud enough that their neighbor could hear. And their neighbor comes over and knocks on the door and is like, "What are you watching?" And they're like, "We're from Texas, and we don't have a church. Can we come watch church with you this morning?" And he said, 4 other people all of a sudden came and joined them, and he's like, "We just had a micro location right in the hotel." So super fun. You never know what God is up to. So welcome to you, those on the online family. In the room, welcome. Glad you're here. If this is your first time, if you're just here because you're visiting, or you're here because you're like, I was going to In-N-Out and got lost, welcome. We're not In-N-Out. The fries are way better there, but welcome. Glad that you are with us and that you would entrust us in this moment with the gift that you have of time. And just that we get to honor that together. One of the things you'll hear us talk about a lot, David already mentioned it, that we do this life together, that we're better together. You'll hear more about that in a little bit, of what it looks like to grow with people and why that's so important. One of the other things that you've heard about already this morning, but this idea of being servants, right? We're just, one of the values we hold so dear is that we are just servants of God. That's it. Like, if you want to call for your life, if you want meaning to your life, if you want to know what life is about, life is this idea that when we are rescued by Jesus, that what the gift we are given is being able to serve one another and serve Him. And so you heard about like just some ways with kids. My wife is often found over there with the kiddos on a weekend, and often what I hear from her is this: "Would you please talk shorter?" She's like, a room with that many kids gets a little chaotic, so just learn how to be quiet a little quicker. But no, seriously, the stuff that God is doing in our family and the different ways that you were probably greeted by somebody this morning. Why? Because people are stepping out going, "I'm just a servant." And we're going to talk about in a little bit of legacy, the idea of serving people beyond our lifespan, and what that looks like. And so welcome to you. Glad you're here. We are in a series called What About 85? And What About 85? It's kind of leaning into that cultural thing. We're told that like 65 is that sweet spot, you know, and if you can retire earlier, like you're winning at life. But if you have to wait, then 65 is that sweet spot where once you hit 65, like life is about you and you get to enjoy and do whatever you want without anybody telling you what to do. And we've been in a series just kind of analyzing. Some of you are laughing right now because you're like, "That's not how it turned out for me, let me tell you." Because I retired and he went with me, you know, like, just kidding. But just the idea of like, we're looking at the life of Caleb, and what's unique about Caleb is there's this moment where he makes a declaration. He's like, "Here I am, I'm 85 years old. And I'm still as strong and as vigorous to go take what God has put in front of me as I was when I was in my 40s. And so we're just having conversations over the last few weeks going, okay, so if we're going to live this life of 85, then we started out with like, who do I want to be at 85? Right? What does that look like? Some of you are like, "I don't want to get to 85. Okay, well, let's set the target a little higher, right? But this idea of if God grants me 85 years on this planet, who do I want to be? Right? And we talked about this idea that today matters, that the faith of tomorrow is built on today. That if I'm going to get to where God's got for me by the time I'm 85, then it begins today. It's not when I'm 85, I will. It's no, when I'm 40, what am I building in my 40s that will last into my 80s? And so we talked last week about one of the things that gets in our way is limitations. and limitations that we have that we set on ourselves, right? Limitations that stop us from leaning into this life that we were created for in Jesus, that hold us back. And we talked last week specifically, we ended with, you got to tell yourself the truth, right? You got to go back to truth. And what is truth? Truth is that the greatest limitation of your life, your sin, your separation from God, the limitation that you could not overcome, Jesus overcame for you. And when I go back to that foundation, then I can look at any limitation in my life and go, if God can do this for me, then if he's called me to that, he will go through my limitations with me to it. And this week we hit this idea of looking forward to the future. There's this word legacy, and we use it a lot in culture. I don't know if you follow basketball at all, or if you're like, John, don't talk about sports. We're going to talk about sports because we're family, okay? So basketball, what's interesting is if you followed it all lately, LeBron James has done something pretty historic, right? LeBron James broke Kareem's scoring record. And here's the thing. People started throwing around the term like, is LeBron the GOAT, right? Is he the greatest of all time? And so there's this whole conversation about who LeBron is and why his legacy is so strong. But can we play with some words this morning? What LeBron has done is destiny, not legacy. And often we confuse those two. Like think about it for a second. If I was built with LeBron's structure, like if I got his genetics, if I won the lottery and got his genetics, I'd play basketball too, right? LeBron has happened to hang around long enough in the NBA that he's able to keep shooting hoops because he hasn't had any major injury. That's destiny. He was built in a certain way for a certain thing, right? And so he stepped into his destiny. But here's the reality. Those records are made to be broken. Everybody thought there's no way anybody will ever break Kareem's, and it's been done, right? And so it's this reality that destiny is not your legacy. Why? Because destiny has to do with the present, has to do with this life. Legacy has to do with the future. Legacy outlives you. Well, what's interesting with LeBron is the things that he's done for community, the things that he's done for others, the way he's used his resources and his upbringing, and the way he's poured out into community. Those things will outlive LeBron James, and those things will be his legacy. When it comes to you, the things that are written about you today that do not continue tomorrow, they are not your legacy. Because legacy is not what is written today, but what is continued when you're gone. What's going to continue when you're gone? Like, what will your legacy be? It's interesting when, I don't know if you've been to a memorial or a funeral within the last year. I would highly recommend, if you haven't, that you just attend a random one, okay? Just go to a memorial or a funeral. And here's why. Because when you get to that spot and you're honoring somebody that's passed, what lives on beyond that person is not things that they accomplished. What lives on beyond that person is not things that they've accumulated. What lives on beyond that is the time when that person sat with this person and poured into them. That time when that person helped them get a jump on life. That term when that person started something for other people that had nothing to do with them. And then the reason I say attend a funeral is this, that all of a sudden you're reminded how short this life is. Because sometimes in the grind of life, it can become really easy to think this is all there is. Right? This is, oh, life's so long. I got 40 some years till I hit that, right? But in a moment when you sit in a memorial, especially for somebody who was too young to die, you know how we have that phrase, like they were gone too soon? All of a sudden you're reminded how short this life is. And so we're going to have this conversation about legacy. And if you were with us, like I said, we've been talking about the life of Caleb in Numbers chapter 14. There's a context there that we started last week. And the context has to do with this group of people who were sent out to spy the land that God had promised. And so this group of people go out, there's 12 of them, 10 of them come back, and they've got this, it's just like God said, but we can't do it, right? The people are too big, the walls are too high, there's no way we can go and take this land. And there's two of them, Joshua and Caleb. Caleb's the one we're focusing on, but Caleb begins to listen to the spiral of all these people. And what I mean by spiral is this. Like literally the people are going, it would be better if we were back in Egypt as slaves, right? It would be better if we were back being mistreated and having no decisions. It would be better if we died in the wilderness. And so all this is thrown on them, right? And Caleb's sitting there listening to them spiral. And then Caleb begins to speak and he goes, hey, don't miss, it was exceedingly good. When we got to the land, it was so good. It was just like God said it was. And he says, on top of that, their protection is gone because if God's with us, he's not with them. And if God's with us, he will give us the land. We got to go do this. And that's where we left it last week. Well, God kind of has a sidebar with Moses at this point. God's like, hey, Moses, come over here, right? And he begins to tell Moses, God goes, hey, I'm done with these people. He's like, I'm going to let all of them die in the wilderness. To which Moses then becomes the PR manager for God, right? He jumps in and goes, hey, God, I wouldn't do that if I was you. He goes, remember, you told the Egyptians that you were claiming these people as yours and you're going to take them to the promised land. If you let them die in the wilderness, this doesn't look good on your resume, God. And I joke about that, but what he continues to do is he literally says that. Then he continues and he goes, okay, God, I need to remind you of who you are. Because when God had met with Moses, God tells Moses, he goes, hey, I'm slow to anger. I'm compassionate. I'm unfailing in love. I'm abounding in love, right? I judge. I am a judge. But these are the things you need to know. And so what Moses does, he goes, hey, God, can I remind you that you're slow in anger, that you're compassionate, that you're abounding in love? And if you're not familiar with the Bible or you're not familiar with God, one of the things I love about what we call the Old Testament, which is the beginning of the book, is I love that it's this relationship of these humans, normal humans with God, where they have these phenomenal conversations where Moses is now steering what God's about to do, that he's challenging what God's about to do. And then in 23, we pick it up this way. So God's speaking, he says, not one of them will ever see the land I promised on oath to their ancestors. No one who has treated me with contempt will ever see it. But because my servant Caleb has a different spirit and follows me wholeheartedly, I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. So God speaks now about Caleb, and the things he says is he goes, hey, Caleb, and Caleb at this point is 40 years old. Caleb has a different spirit. Now, he's not saying that the Holy Spirit was with Caleb and not with the 10 that came back with a different report. What he's saying is this, that Caleb's spirit, Caleb's posture, Caleb's following, if you like, is that he is bent towards obedience, not rebellion. That he leans towards following everything that God wants him to do, not doing his own thing. So the different spirit has to do with, hey, this is a guy who considers God before himself. And it's followed up with this language of he followed wholeheartedly. We'll get into wholeheartedly a little bit later. But this idea within this follow wholeheartedly is that he was fulfilled, he was content to walk behind God. Is there any better picture of what it means to follow God than physically having in mind that my heart posture, my life is content to be second behind God and not out ahead of God? And what's spoken of Caleb by God, what's spoken about Caleb by God is that he was one that was content. He was fulfilled. He was complete to be behind God, not ahead of God. I don't know about you, but one of the biggest challenges in my life is trying to not get ahead of God. Right? And here's what I mean. I'll make a decision and I'm like, come on, God, come bless it. Right? Or I'll make a decision and I haven't even stopped to consider what God wants. And it can become real easy if we're not careful that we're actually living ahead of God because we're not content. Why? Because I don't know if you know this or not, but he's 40 here. The part we're about to jump into, he's 85. He spent 45 years in the wilderness. And we're not content to go, God, I'll give you 45 years of wilderness wandering. We're like, no, God, if you're not acting quick enough now, I'm going to get out and I'm going to make this decision because you're taking too long. But it says of Caleb that he was fulfilled. He was content. And then it finishes there. I will bring him into the land he went to, and his descendants will inherit it. Wait. Caleb's going to spend his life, and he's going to watch entire generations pass away. And he's going to be in the wilderness for 45 years. And then God's going to give him an inheritance, but it's not for him, it's for his descendants. I need you to catch this, that what God is talking about is legacy. That he's telling Caleb, hey, Caleb, you're going to go do this, but it's not for you, it's for them, which in the verses we've been reading in Joshua 14, and these will sound familiar if you've been here the last couple of weeks, this is what we've been going through. But in the verses we're about to read, I want you to catch who it's for, and I want you to catch the testimony about Caleb. In verse 6, it says this, now the people of Judah approached Joshua at Gilgal, and Caleb, son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, said to him, you know what the Lord said to Moses, the man of God at Kadesh Barnea, about you and me. I was 40 years old when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to explore the land. And I brought him back a report according to my convictions. But my fellow Israelites who went up with me made the hearts of the people melt in fear. I, however, followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. So on that day, Moses swore to me, the land on which your feet have walked will be your inheritance, and that of your children forever, because you have followed the Lord my God wholeheartedly. Now then, just as the Lord promised, he has kept me alive for 45 years, since the time he said to Moses, while Israel moved about in the wilderness. So here I am today, 85 years old. I am still as strong as the day Moses sent me out. I am just as vigorous to go out now, or to go out to battle now, as I was then. Now give me this hill country that the Lord promised me that day. You yourself heard then that the Anakites, the giants, were there, and their cities were large and fortified. But the Lord helping me, I will drive them out just as he said. Then Joshua blessed Caleb, son of Jephunneh, and gave him Hebron as his inheritance. So Hebron belonged to Caleb, the son of Jephunneh, the Kenizzite, ever since, because he followed the Lord, the God of Israel, wholeheartedly. Hebron used to be called Kiriath Arba, after Arba, who was the greatest man among the Anakites. Then the land rested from war. God doesn't just say, hey, you're going to go and take this land. That last part where he talks about this man named Arba, this man was the greatest of the giants. So when God goes, hey, Caleb, you're going to go, here's the land you're inheriting. You're going to get Hebron. He's saying, hey, you're going to get the land that belonged to the largest giant of all. And so now what's set forward for Caleb, what's continued on 45 years later, God's going, hey, I'm going to give you this. And what we catch here is that Caleb blesses. Listen, it was a blessing. It was a blessing to get the land of the giants. Why? Because all the way along, God has been going, it's for future generations. It's for future generations. This is for your descendants. They're going to have it forever. And so what I want to do is this. I get told sometimes that I'm not very practical. I get told that I'm abstract, and sometimes people walk out going, I don't get it, right? Or they walk out going, That's good, but I don't know what I'm supposed to do. So today I want to be as clear as I possibly can, okay? I have notes for you. Yep. You're going to see some of those on screen, and then we're going to end with homework today. Like literally, you're going to walk out of here and do something with this message, okay? And so we're going to build towards that. But the way we're going to do it is this, under the umbrella of how do you build a legacy? How do you build a legacy? Because I don't know if you know this or not, whether you plan on building a legacy or not, you are building one. So let's plan for the legacy we're going to leave. Let's plan for where we're heading. And so the first thing from this is you got to know where you are. You have to know where you are. If you don't know where you are, you can't know where you're going. What I mean by this is my wife and I, we were traveling back from California a couple of months ago. And you know, like you do on any trip now, right? You take out your map and those, you know, you unfold it. Just kidding, right? Some of you are like, what's a map? But the idea is, you know, you pick up your phone, you put in whatever directions you want, or you ask Siri to get you home, like whatever it happens to be. And what does Siri do? She goes, okay, here is your location. And from your location, here is how you get to where you want to go. And so what happened to us is we're coming back, and there was an accident on I-10. And all of a sudden, Siri just starts to reroute. I mean, she's sending us everywhere. My wife's like, I think there's something wrong with my phone. Like, it's not working right. And so now we're on like these back streets in the desert coming back. And so I have no clue where we are. But she goes, why don't you try your phone? Because for some reason, we always think that'll work, right? Like, change the technology. So I try my phone, and I plug it in, and all of a sudden, guess what? Siri can't find our location. I have no clue where we are. We're on back streets in the desert. So what's your natural inclination? I know what I'll do. I'll call my friend, and what's the first question they're going to ask? Where are you? I don't know. Well, I don't know how to get you home, right? Because it's so important. You have to know where you are to know where you're going. And what I love here is that Caleb pauses, right? And he goes, here I am today. And he's not lying to himself. He's going, I'm 85. In our version, we have an exclamation after that because it's like, whoa. He goes, I'm 85 years old and I'm as strong and as vigorous as I was the day the Lord told me. He's being honest with where he's at. That he's owning, here I am. And I think there's a part of if you're going to build a legacy, and it's a legacy that matters, that counts, because you're building one whether you like it or not. But if you're going to build a legacy intentionally, you have to know where you are. Well, what do I mean by that? Well, you got to know where you are with the Lord. You got to know where you are with God. You got to know where you are in life. It would be foolish for me to tell you, hey, church, I'm going to leave a legacy of being the greatest basketball player of all time. And I'm going to open all these things. You all look at me like you're crazy. Why? Because you know where I am, right? And sometimes with life, we got to be honest. Where are we today? Not what is the dream ideal of where I want to be. Not, well, I had great plans in my 20s and in my 40s. No, who are you today? You got to know where I am today. The next thing that comes out of this is you have to know who it's for. You have to know who it's for. Who is your legacy for? You have to know who you have in mind. And in this context, what we hear over and over is that, hey, Caleb, you're going to go fight giants. But guess what? When you slay the biggest of the biggest giants, it's not for you to inherit a land. It's who? For all those kids coming behind you. You got to know who it's for. If you build a life only as big as you, I hate to tell you, that life will only be as big as you and it will die with you. But who is it for? Who do you wake up? Who do you wake up living for? I mean, think about it as a church, right? We got stuff going on that's way bigger than any of us, right? But the hope is this. We didn't open Park Collective that in 10 years, that was fun. The hope of Park Collective is that there's a group of people that meet in Prescott Valley, right? They're a community that is having their needs met by the church like God intended, where we get to serve our community out of love, where we get to step into this longer vision than who we are. I mean, think about where you sit today. There was a group of people, I don't know if you know this or not, there was a group of people down on the square. There's a church, it used to be called First Baptist. There was a group of people at First Baptist years and years and years ago that went, this town needs another church. We need to reach more people for Jesus. And this little church planted, and they called it, well, it was a much longer name back then, but Heights Church. And they started on a corner. And for years and years and years, it was just a faithful gathering, just a few. Can you imagine? They never could have imagined in their wildest dreams what this would become. That we have the impact of being able to reach out. Why? Because a faithful group of people back here allowed us to stand on their shoulders. We want a legacy that's longer. We want the church to have a legacy. Not Heights Church, the church. And now this beautiful continuing on of church, you realize anyone who stands on this stage, anyone who sits in these seats, we're just interims. You get this, right? We're just interims. Because the goal isn't that this ends with us. The goal is this outlives us, however long we've got to live, that what God is doing here is going to impact the globe for what? For Jesus. We have to know who it's for. Do you know who your life's for? I love in here that the last point for this part is you got to know your heart. I got to know my heart. I love that over and over this word wholehearted is used, right? And here's what's significant about the heart in Bible times is the heart was the center of the human being. It's not like it is now where we're like, oh, my heart is what makes me fall in love, right? No, back then it was like your emotions, your will, your decision-making, it was all central to the heart. And the idea of the heart, that what we're given with Caleb is that he was wholeheartedly, he was completely following God. And in our culture, you might have got this advice, right? You sit with somebody and they're explaining what they want to do or who they want to date or what that looks like. And the advice that's given is this: just trust your heart. Can I tell you that's horrible advice? Okay, if you've received that, I'm sorry. Somebody fed you some horrible advice. Hey, here's what I mean. Jeremiah chapter 17, verse 9. So this is a prophet of God. He's speaking on behalf of God. He says, the heart is deceitful above all things and beyond cure. Who can understand it? And this isn't isolated in Scripture where it talks about the heart. But that word deceitful is translated in another story, same word. And the way it's translated is that this King Jehu, he tricks a whole bunch of prophets of another god. And he tricks them into a meeting and then he slaughters them. That idea of being tricked, of being deceived, you need to understand that when the Bible talks about your heart, the center of who you are, the center of who you are tricks you. It deceives you. And some of you are like, John, I don't get this. Okay, here we go. You ready? Why do I walk onto car dealerships? I mean, why do you go to a car dealership? But I have a great car. My car works fine. But here's the thing, right? True story. Just happened last week. So I had my car at the dealership. They were fixing something. It was a collision place because I was in Phoenix and a cat ran across the road and I hit the cat. Some of you are like, how can you tell this story from stage, right? Some of you in the room, you don't like cats and you're like, Totally kidding. But I did hit a cat. And I had to go to the dealership to get it fixed. But here's the thing, when I'm leaving the dealership, guess what I do? I get to the corner, and there's a car that is faster than mine. There's a car that's shinier than mine. There's a car with a price tag that I can convince my wife is a good idea. But my heart is tricking me because my heart wants it. So you know what happens next? My mind kicks into gear. And I've already got the sales pitch lined up for when I get home to my wife with a picture of it. And here's the reasons, baby. And here's the thing. Some of you guys in this room, you bought a new truck and you didn't need it. But you convinced your wife that the gas mileage was better. But the reality is you just wanted what you wanted. And your heart wasn't being truthful. Because the sales pitch you were giving yourself is not why the heart wanted the truck. I used to stand outside with my iPhone outside the Verizon store. This was back before they had the deals they have today, right? And I'd have a perfectly good working phone in my hand. But it's 5 a.m. and I'm out in the freezing cold with my buddy in a line waiting for Verizon to open because the new iPhone just dropped, right? And I've convinced my wife, baby, this one will take way better pictures of our kids. But the truth of the matter is, the reason I'm in the Verizon line is because my heart wants a new iPhone. And my brain has gone into gear to convince me why. When we say, just trust your heart, church, we need to stand on truth. And the truth is, your heart is deceitful. It is deceiving. It is trickery. And what would your heart love to do? Trick you into a really dumb decision that costs you more than you ever thought about your legacy. And so we got some hard work of the soul to do. Have you heard the phrase that the heart wants what it wants? Have you heard that? The context that comes out of is a 56-year-old man convincing himself that it's okay to have a relationship, an intimate relationship with his 21-year-old stepdaughter. And the reason in giving it was the heart wants what it wants. Your heart can be wrong. Even Taylor Swift knows this. It's me. Hi. I'm the problem. It's me. At tea time, everybody agrees. I'll stare directly at the sun, but never in the mirror. Church, to know what our heart is, we have to stare into the mirror. Because you can't trust your heart. And so what I want to do is, I told you it was practical. And so this week you got homework. We're going to put some things on screen. I expect you to either write them down, put them in your notes, take out your phone, take a picture of them, or if you're already writing, write them in whatever you're writing. I can see you guys. None of you have moved 3 rows back. The front rows are like, oh man, we got to do this. He can see me. The rest of you are like, he can't see me. I can see you in the back. Because it's this important, church. If we're going to build legacies that matter, we have to do the hard work of the soul. And so, online family, I can see you. You got to capture this. And this week, here's what the homework is. Can you do coffee with a friend? And if coffee's not your thing, do tea. If tea's not your thing, go get some food. If food's not your thing, go to a park. Because your heart will convince you why you shouldn't do this, by the way. Maybe it's your life group. Maybe your life group huddles up this week. Why? Because we grow with people. We grow with people. Isolated, I can be lied to and make horrendous decisions. When I sit with my wife and tell her about my next decision, she often goes, well, that's not very smart. Or she'll ask me a question that gets me to the heart of the matter. That's why you need to sit with someone. Sit with your spouse, maybe. But you're going to ask 3 questions. And the first one is discerning, where am I? Where am I really? Why is the really on there? So that you don't lie to yourself. Where am I really? And what this means, what this is getting at is where am I at with God? Where am I at in my relationship with Jesus? Where am I putting my time? Does my time reflect the values I hold? I mean, God's smacking me in the face with this one lately. What I say is my first yes. And if you ask me, my time, my family is my first yes. And yet when I stop and go, where am I really? I've had to do some hard looks in the mirror to get to the soul, heart and soul of the issue. But where am I really? Where are you at in your spiritual habits? Do you remember to read the Bible because you signed up for the Bible app and it pops up a verse of the day and you're like, oh, there's my Bible time? Or is it between Sundays you don't even know if you could find your Bible? That prayer is a distant thing you use when life goes real bad. Where am I at really with God? Where am I at relationally? Where am I at with community? Where am I at with the people of God? The next one is, who is this life for really? Who is this life for really? Why are you doing what you're doing, really? Who is this life for? Who's beyond the grave that you're still paying it forward for? We all stand on the shoulders of somebody, good, bad, and different. But how do we be people that set the next generation up beautifully? Because it can be real easy, right? To say it's for them, but it's really about me. And until we stop and go, who is this for really? And then the last question has to do with your heart. Why am I doing this really? Why am I doing it? Good job. Front 4 rows, you are killing it. Right there, I see it, you're killing it. Pictures happening. What about this side? Yep, there we go. Good, you're killing it. Online screenshot. But seriously, why am I doing this really? And you got to fill in the blank, okay? You got to fill in the blank. Why am I in debt, really? Why am I in debt? Because if we had a conversation across the table and we were just honest and I said, do you like being a slave? You would say, no, I don't want to be a slave to anybody, right? But then we make choices to put ourselves in slavery to debt over and over and over and over. And so the question is, why am I in debt really? Why am I saying this is okay? Why am I saying it's okay to be put in this prison? And so you got to challenge yourself, like, why am I doing this really? I mean, for some of you, why do you want the house really? And here's how it works, right? Because you want this house, but then your brain kicks in, right? And so if somebody houses you, oh, you're moving houses? Yeah, we're going to get a 26,000 square foot place, right? And you're like, oh, that's amazing. And then they'll tell you, yeah, we just want to have life group at our house. We just want to have more people over. But the reality is this, that if you're not doing it in 1,200 square feet, you're not going to do it with the rest. And so it's being honest with our heart. Why do I want it? And church, be okay with, if the answer is, I just want it, then at least own that and be honest with it, right? Because then you know where you are and where your heart is, and you can begin to project your legacy. But if I'm lying to myself and kidding myself, I mean, think about it. Why do I want this job, really? Well, John, I know it'll stress out my family. I know like the travel will be a lot more. I know there's a lot of negatives to it, but I would make more money. And if I make more money, then we can tithe more. You see how it works, right? But the job actually provides for you significance. The job actually provides you with a step forward in life, more advancement, if you like. But John, we tithe. Can I tell you, if you don't have the ancient rhythm of tithing with little, you won't have it with much. Don't kid yourself. Your heart is deceitful. It tricks you. Be honest. If you sit down with someone and you go, John, I just want the job because I want the job and I want to feel significant and get ahead of my old man, then just be honest, because then at least you know what you're living for. But don't let your heart trick you into, I will be a better Christian if. Don't let it do it. The relationship that you're chasing and you're pursuing, don't fall for have you ever done this? You sat with a young couple and you're hearing them go back and forth and you're like, oh, you are not good for each other, right? This is not a match made in heaven. And they're going back and forth and you ask, why are you guys together? Oh, because I just love him. I just love her. Your heart is lying to you. Your heart is lying to you. Because somewhere along the way we've gone, just trust your heart. Just be honest. I want this person because I want this person. I like everything that comes with it. You got to fill in the blank. Why am I so driven to go back to lust, not love? Why do I go back to those spaces that have to do with me just instant gratification? Why is that? You got to sit and be honest with it. Why am I driven to constantly be looking somewhere else for the affection and whatever love I desire? You got to be honest. You got to get to your heart. Because your heart is a part of what will build your legacy. But if we don't stop and do the homework, if we don't stop and do the hard work of the soul, of looking in the mirror, it's going to be really hard, church, to be 85 years strong. And at 85 go, I am willing, because I'm as strong and as vigorous, and I know it's been 45 years and God made this promise, but I am here and I am 85 and I am going to go take out those giants, not for me, but for the generations that's coming behind me. I mean, is there a better call? But it required Caleb in his 40s to know where he was and what he was going to do to build a legacy at 85. What's your legacy going to be? What's your legacy going to be? Do you know where you are? Do you know who it's for? And do you know your heart? Well, you have 3 questions to get you to that this week with somebody. And my prayer, my hope for you is that as you lean into it and as you get honest, that it'll change everything in a beautiful way. That what would be said of you, said of our community, said of our church, is they were a group of people who were fulfilled by walking behind God. Isn't that beautiful? I can't think of a better testimony than you were content to follow God wherever he leads. Let's pray. God, we come before you. God, thank you. Thank you for not letting us be deceived. God, thank you for raising the questions of our heart. Thank you for seeing deep into us. God, thank you for these moments in community that's going to be created. God, I pray over anyone in the room who's like, John, I don't know who to talk to. I pray, God, that you would provide for them. I pray for those that are online, that are in isolation, that this week they would move away from isolation to another person. God, I pray that we would find people in community, and I pray we would be raw and honest. God, I pray that you would give us visions and dreams of what legacy looks like for the next generation, for those that come behind when we're gone. God, I pray that you in this next week would stir within your church through your Spirit in such a way that we've never seen before. And God, I pray that you would give us the courage to be honest, the courage to follow, the courage to be content. God, as we use our bodies to declare in these moments how great you are. Thank you for being a great God. Thank you for being good. And thank you for loving us. We are grateful people. And everybody said, amen.